Good morning, everyone. My name's Jeff Wade. I'm the team lead for community outreach in the natural resource industries for Esri here in Redlands, California. It's my pleasure to welcome you to this morning's webinar organized in concert with the Esri Mining User Group. This webinar is entitled Implementing Geoscience Workflows in ArcGIS Pro, and it's part 2 of a webinar series. The material we'll cover was born out of questions raised by the Mining User Group about ArcGIS Pro and its readiness for geoscience workflows. And we'll continue where we left off the last time, but more of that in a minute. The webinar is being recorded and will be posted in the next few days. As a participant, you'll receive a follow-up email with a link to that recording. Now, I'm confident that many of you will have attended other GoToWebinar webinars in the past, and today we'll follow our normal practice of encouraging you to enter questions as we go along in the GoToWebinar questions dialog box during the presentation. We'll answer as many of those questions as time permits at the end of the session. And as you probably figured out now, I'll be your MC for the webinar. So now let's go ahead and introduce a couple of our guests that we'll be hearing from today. Well, I just introduced myself, and next I'm joined by Chris Franks, who's the MUG chairman from Freeport-McMoRan, chairman of the Mining User Group from his office in Phoenix. Our main presenter for the day will be Mike Price, who many of you will know and who has his own consulting company, Entrada. Mike is in Blaine, Washington today. And finally, Mark Smithgill, Senior Solutions Engineer with Esri, speaking to us from Texas. So we're really spread to the four corners today. I've asked Chris to say a few words in introduction to the Mining User Group. Chris?
Thank you, Jeff. And good morning to everyone, and thank you for taking time out of the day to join us in this webinar. Again, my name is Chris Franks, and I'm the chairman of the Mining User Group Steering Committee. I'd like to thank you all for joining us, and just give you a little bit of an introduction to the Esri MUG. Our purpose is to gather really business needs from our mining community, and we work with Esri to drive technology to match the business needs for the members. We've been in existence for approximately 7 years, and we have a LinkedIn site for our communication. And you can see the website address on the screen. Again, our goal really is to drive business value through these webinars. We're very focused on making them practical and very real for our users. And if there's no value, we're not going to be doing them. And we're focused on the most current technology too. And once completed, the webinars again will be added to an online library of resources that will be available for everyone. We are also getting prepared for the 2017 International Users Conference in San Diego, and I would encourage anybody that is listening that you would attend that if you possibly could, and feel free to join us at the natural resources track, and specifically on the mining tracks on the Wednesday of the conference. With that, I will hand off to Mike Price, who will get us right into our agenda. Mike?
Thank you, Chris. Good morning, everyone. I will be your instructor today for about 30 minutes total, and today I'm going to build upon the webinar that we conducted in early May, where I taught you 4 primary tasks listed in part 1. We learned how to import an ArcMap desktop map into Pro. We added an online base map. We brought in some Excel tabular geochemistry data, and we posted that as an event theme, that geochemical data, and then we saved it as a point feature class. Today I'm going to start right where we left off with an existing Pro project in Battle Mountain, Nevada. So we're going to open that project exactly as we closed it for part 1, and inside of that project we're going to focus on the single layout template that was imported from desktop. We're going to use that layout to create a template, and we're going to prepare and populate multiple layouts inside of Pro. After we've built our layouts and prepared them for publishing either as a map or as a digital file, we're going to export several of them into PDF files. And once we've done that, we're going to go out and look at those files, and then we're going to talk about what we might do with those files once they're built as PDFs. So with that, that's the end of the formal piece of structured training, but I'm going to step a little further. I'm going to go into ArcMap, and I'm going to create a new map in our project, in Pro. I'm going to create a new map, and I'm going to add some 24,000 scale geological data from the Antler Peak Quadrangle in Battle Mountain, Nevada. I'm going to show you how that looks in Pro, and we're going to go in and look at it and actually look at symbology. You're going to zoom around and explore a bit. And today you'll just be watching me, but this data will all be available for you to use on your own when you're ready to try this out. And after I finish, we'll turn it back to Mark, and he'll show you how we publish that data and how we might use it in a product where we can bring ArcMap information into PowerPoint or into Office using Map for Office. So with that, let's go to the next slide, and I will show you our opening slide for this project, and then Jenny will share my computer, and I'll start training. So this is part 2 of our implementing geoscience workflows in ArcGIS Pro. And again, today we're going to do 2 things. We're going to create, manage, and export multiple layouts, and we're going to map some 24,000 scale geology at Battle Mountain, Nevada. The slide that you see here is the gold representation in the old Rattler area at Battle Mountain. And we'll see this again in a minute. So Jenny, go ahead and share my screen, and I will start in with ArcGIS Pro. All right, so now here we are looking at that same screen in Pro, and there's 2 ways I could have opened this, and I've already done it, so we're going to start right from this same screen that we just saw a minute ago as a slide. And we can either open this from a list of recent projects, or you can actually browse to it and open it with a browser. But in any case, bring up your old project, or if you haven't done this, this particular exercise, part 1, you'll be able to download the entire training set and start right here with this particular map. Now, the last time I saved this, I was actually in a layout. So right now there are 2 objects in my project. There's a Battle Mountain layout and a Battle Mountain map. So let's look at both of those quickly. This is the layout. It's symbolized for gold, and it's showing a title, just a very simple title, Soil Geochemistry Data, Battle Mountain, Nevada. Let's go over and look at the actual map. Now you can see the map by going down and expanding the Battle Mountain map frame, and this will list all the layers that are included and open in this layout right now. We'll go back and forth into this map frame soon when we start to work with multiple layouts. But I want to take you now to the Battle Mountain map itself. Now you don't see the layout, you see the same extent, and you see the layers that are available, visible, turned on, and again, gold is turned on, but I'm going to quickly turn off gold and turn on 1 or 2 others. Let's see, here comes our silver data shown in a yellow to blue thematic scheme. There's some arsenic data, which I'll show you. And there's also antimony and mercury. These are 5 elements that are typically analyzed in soils and rock around for gold exploration project. So what I want to do now is I want to go in and looking at my notes here as we go. We're going to go back to the layout. So I'm going to click up here on the layout in our objects list, and inside of this layout we can see that nothing's turned on. I'm going to turn gold back on again, and I'm going to take another step. I'm going to go over to the upper right corner of my screen, and I'm going to expand the project tile. When I do that, you'll notice that I have the opportunity to work with maps, and there's only 1 map in here now. There will be 2 when we finish today. I can work with layouts. There's only 1 layout in here now, but we're going to work with several layouts almost immediately. We have this 1 layout called Battle Mountain, and it's really important to do this inside of the project pane so it'll help you keep your maps separate from your layouts, especially when you're starting. It does get a little confusing. So the first thing I want to do, and it's very okay to always do this, is right-click on something. I'm going to right-click on the Battle Mountain layout, and when I do, a little menu pops up, and it allows me to do any of several things. It's already open, don't need to open it. I can save it as a layout file. I can do other things, including some maintenance on it. But look here, I can copy it. So I'm going to copy that layout. And then when I do that, it's stored in memory. I'm going to sneak back up to the layouts object in the pane, and I'm going to right-click on it, not on the Battle Mountain map, but on layouts itself. I'm going to paste that layout. And what that does is it creates a new layout, and I'm going to open that copied layout. So I'm going to right-click on it, and I'm going to open it. Now watch the top bar on my screen, because now you'll see that there are two layouts in my object set. One is called Battle Mountain, the other one's called Battle Mountain 1. So right now what I want to do is I'm going to show you that we've created a new layout, and we want to go in and activate that layout. So I'm going to go up to the ribbon on the top and select the major tab for layouts, and I'm going to activate that layout. And when I do, it actually opens up the map in the background, but it still leaves the layout on the display. I can actually go in and work on this map right now. So we can go in and we can inspect all of these geochemical data layers. I'm just going to expand their legend so you can see them. There are 5 of them. And again, these are typical elemental analyses used in gold exploration. Notice that gold and mercury, Hg, are reported in units of parts per billion. Arsenic, antimony, and mercury are all in parts, silver, arsenic, and antimony are all in parts per million. Just remember, elements can be reported in many different units. Keep straight of your units. I always put them into the layer's name in my contents so that I can keep an eye on them. Okay, so now we're going to go back and close that activation. It's very okay to activate and close maps in layouts. In fact, you'll be doing it a lot as you do advanced layout construction. So you do that by always going up and finding the layout tab, and if the map is active, you have a very simple choice. It's close that tab. All right, so now when I look in my contents for this layout, I can see that I've got some very specific items listed inside of Battle Mountain 1. I've got a legend, a north arrow, a scale bar, and some text. And that text is actually the title. Just remember, text and title can be used interchangeably in this presentation. It's just the way I built the map. So what we want to do is we want to go to first the legend and right-click on it. And a little flyout appears, and at the bottom we can go to properties, just like we would do in desktop. Right-click properties. And take a look at these legend properties, and you can see that there are several different items at the top. There's a options item, a arrangement item, and a placement item. So we're going to go through a few of these and work on them a little bit right now. First thing I want to do is go to the placement item on the right, and I want to consider how I want this legend to be placed in the document. In desktop, it was pinned to the lower right corner, and it had a predefined halo around it or border, and it displays the default element in the map. If I had silver up here, it would be showing me silver. A couple of things you might want to consider are whether or not you want to preserve the aspect ratio of this legend, and I typically turn that off because as you add other things in, the legend needs to grow and shrink as appropriate. And I'm also going to change the default width. I'm going to take that up to 1.75 inches. So I'm going to change 2 things. I'm going to turn off the relative aspect ratio, and I'm going to increase the width a little bit to incorporate larger title items. And I'm going to leave it pinned to the lower right corner, lower left corner. Okay, now I'm going to switch over to the text item. We see where it says text symbol on top. I'm going to go to that. I'm going to go to text symbol, and I want to change my text symbol to, I'm fiddling a little bit here. I'm going to double click on it up here in the table of contents, because up here I can go in and edit that. I'm going to edit it right up here in the table of contents, and I'm going to add a new line. Oh, here we go. Now I've got to it. I had to click on the object. Once I clicked on the object, it opened it up. So I'm going to add a new line, and I'm going to type in AU space PPB. Now what caught me there is I remembered I have to click on it first before I can enter text. I'm going to apply that, and when I do, notice that my title, my map's title now includes AUPPB as a third line. So now I'm going to close the formatting of text, and I'm going to go back and right click and open up legend properties one more time, because I want to change the name of this legend, and I want to call it Battle Mountains _ AU for Battle Mountain Gold. So I'm creating a very specific layout here for displaying gold, and I've just added I've modified the table of the legend. I've changed the title, and I've renamed the legend. So I'll tell it OK. And the next thing I want to do is go back into layouts in my project pane, go down to layouts, and there is my Battle Mountain AU. This is updated now. The first one, Battle Mountain, that'll still be a template if I need it. But right now I'm going to clone this one or copy it, and I'm going to set it up for silver. So I'm going to right click on it, and I'm going to copy it. I'm going to go back to the top of the layouts piece, right click and paste it. Now at this point I've got to open it, bring it into the my project. Notice it's called Battle Mountain AU1. So now I've got two Battle Mountain Gold layouts, but I want this one to be silver. So I'm going to quickly go over and go to Properties. I'm going to rename it for Silver AG. And I'm going to go into the text for the title block, and I'm going to change AUPPB to AGPPM. So now I have two different layouts in my project specifically designed for an element, one for silver, one for gold. And up on your selection line up at the top of your workspace, you can go back and forth between the gold layout and the silver layout. Okay, I'm going to save my project now. We've done some pretty good work. We could continue through and create legends for all 5 or titles and layouts for all 5 of our elements. But right now what I want to do is I want to go back over to Project and open up the gold project pane, or gold layout. And the best way to do this is truly not open it again, but just go up into the table, up into your objects on the top of your map and click back to gold. Okay, now we're ready to actually publish this. Check it out, make sure it's showing your gold elements, it's showing your gold in parts per billion. So I'm going to go back into projects, and I'm going to select that layout in the layout group for gold, and I'm going to go to export to file. Now in this case, I'm going to export it out as a PDF file, but I also want to put a little point of reference in here that says this is the Old Rattler area. Old Rattler for gold. And I'm going to export it. I'm going to leave a resolution at 200 dots per inch, best quality on the image, and I'm going to export it. Also notice the embedded fonts checkbox. You want to be sure that you embed your fonts, because there are going to be times that we're using some geology fonts that aren't standard, and we want to make sure those are part of this PDF. So I'm going to export it, but I've got to tell it where to store it. So I've got to go into my Battle Mountain area. I have an empty graphics folder already created, and this will be in the data set when you download it and start working. So I'm going to save this as Battle Mountain Old Rattler Gold. So I'm going to hit the export button, and it will send it out. All right, now let's go to the silver layout. And I'm going to open it on top. But in this case, we're still showing our gold elements. So what I've got to do is expand the map frame, turn off gold, turn on silver, check it out, make sure everything looks right. It does. We can export this now. So I'm going to go ahead and go back to Project, Battle Mountain Silver this time, right click, export to file, And in this case, I'm going to kind of clone off the last name. I'm going to change AU to AG. And again, file management, file naming, really important. Have systems, test them out, make sure they work, stick with them. So I'm going to export that. We've exported 2 old Rattler maps. Now, a really nice thing about a layout is that it will allow you to use multiple bookmarks, multiple extents. So I'm going to shoot a second map for my entire extent for this project. The bookmark for that is stored over here in the upper right corner of my map. And I'm going to redock my projects pane. I'm going to expand bookmarks. And I'm going to zoom to the Battle Mountain 1 to 150,000 scale bookmark. And I'm going to do it right here rather than going into the map. So we're out on the full extent of Battle Mountain, our geochemistry study, showing silver. So what I want to do now is I want to go back into projects, and I want to go to oops. I killed my silver layout. I've got to recreate my silver layout. Sorry, guys. Get to watch me do this. I'm going to reopen it, and I'm going to rename it, and I'm going to retitle it Silver Parts per million. Now I'm going to go back into my project pane again, and there it is. I'm going to right-click on it, and I'm going to export it to a file. In this case, I'm going to call it the Battle Mountain District Silver Map. So I shot 2 different maps out of the same layout, one at the regional scale and one at the local scale. So I'm going to export that out quickly. And I'm going to go back to my gold map again, my gold layout, sorry. It's up here on the table of contents. And I'm going to zoom to its full extent to the bookmark for the district. And I'm going to change, this is the important part, I have to reopen the data frame, map frame, and change from silver back to gold. Once I've done that, I can export my gold points. So I'm going to go back into the project pane, go to my gold layout, and I'm going to export that, and then this one's going to be called Battle Mountain District AU. So inside of a single layout, you can store multiple bookmarks and shoot maps to highlight different parts of the project or the entire study area. So I'm going to export this one. Okay, I'm going to save my project now, and I'm going to remember to pin the project pane. And I'm going to minimize ArcGIS Pro. I'm going to go over to my file manager, and I'm going to navigate onto my training drive. And I'm going to go into the graphics folder, and here we see 4 graphics that we've created. The largest is the Battle Mountain District Gold graphic. So I'm going to open that in Adobe Reader. Now I'm going to tidy up my screen a little bit by closing the flyout on the right, but I'm also going to expand the layers item on the left. Now, in ArcMap desktop exports, we would have noticed that everything down toward the bottom of the map was pushed into a single object called image. But in Pro, each of the different objects in your table of contents is able to be displayed and visualized separately, including rasters and items with transparency. So notice that we can, oh, I see a problem. I got my layout in there, my legend twice. Let me go back. I'm going to close this one. Sorry about that. Reshoot. I'm going to go back to old Rattler AU. And here we are. I'm going to expand the layers item in Reader. And down at the bottom, if I want to turn off the world topographic map, the base, I can. If I want to turn off my soil points, I can expand it and turn them off. So you have more flexibility inside of Reader to place and manage objects in your table of contents for that Adobe Reader software. And I like to take a snapshot. And if I snapshot the entire...
Sounds like Mike is having a little trouble with his voice here.
Yeah, I can jump in the meantime, and I think I can pick up from where off. If he joins, please speak up, Mike. So what I'm doing now is I'm exporting a PDF from the Pro project that Mike shared with me, and then I'll go ahead and I'll fire that up and show you some of that layer functionality that we have within PDF viewers. So here under the layers button here, I can expand my map. We have our different labels. Make this a little wider for us. We have our faults and folds, etc. So all of these are different layers that can be turned on and off. With the 1.4 release of ArcGIS Pro, we have enabled all vector data to remain in vector content. So I can turn off my gold assay here. I can turn off faults and folds and the cross section itself. So I have a lot of flexibility. So now that I have a PDF, Mike has shared the Pro project with me, and I want to demonstrate another way of sharing this map. So as Mike has performed his analysis and brought that assay data in, we want to share this back with the rest of the organization. So under the sharing tab at the top, we have the export button, so we can export this to the PDF, which we just did, as well as sharing this back to our portal. So I can select Share as a Web Map, and I'm presented with a pop-up box here. I can select how this web map is configured. So if I want to query this data, I can set up an exploratory web map. Same with an editable web map. If I need to share this back out and get feedback from the organization, make this editable out in the field via collector, we can do that. Or if I just simply want to visualize this. So I'll select the visualization button, and in the interest of time, I have pre-generated this, this web map on my portal here. So as I start to zoom in, I'm logged in as myself. I can start to zoom in and see the geology underlying the imagery as the base map. I can see our faults and folds here. I can click on features, and I can explore this map via a web browser rather than through ArcGIS Pro. So this can be shared out to my organization in this format. So oftentimes we want to share this in a presentation medium like PowerPoint. So this web map interface is great for interacting and building your web map, but it's not PowerPoint. So let's go ahead and I'll fire up a new PowerPoint presentation, and we have the ArcGIS Maps for Office add-in enabled. So I'm signed in, and let's go ahead and add a map. So this reads my identity within my portal, and it shows me the different maps and content items that I have access to. So I'll select this Antler Peak 24K Geology web map, and then this wizard will guide me through how to configure this web map to be shared within PowerPoint here. So if I want to choose what layers we have turned on and off, I can do that here. I'll click Next. We'll have a legend here. And then if I want this web map to take up, just a small section of the slide, the top half, the right half, or the whole slide. I can turn on the initial zoom extent, and then I'll insert this into the map. So as I go up to slideshow and start my presentation, we are presented with this initial slide. So at first, we are just working with a static image of this slide, but in the top left, we want to unlock this map. So when I select Unlock Map, that takes the web map we have and then loads the dynamic web map that I just published to Portal that Mike performed an analysis on. So now, as I zoom, I can get that same dynamic web map interface without leaving PowerPoint. I can exit live mode at the top, and then progress through the rest of the PowerPoint.
Well, thank you, Mark. Hey, this is Mike. I'm back online now. If,
all right.
You want me to get back. So, Jenny, go ahead and bring my screen back. And I'm getting ready to continue about where we left off. Now, we did have a chance to quickly look at a PDF in Acrobat Reader, and you could see that there were many interesting enhancements that we have now with a PDF file coming out of Pro. It's much more effective than the old PDFs we used to get out of ArcMap, out of desktop. And one of my favorites is that now if you put transparency anywhere in your table of contents, near the top, toward the bottom, the items below that partially transparent layer will show up as individual items in your PDF file. All right, so what I want to do now is I want to go back into my project, and I'm showing you right now my export for my gold for the district of Battle Mountain. I'm going to go now and change speeds a little bit. I'm going to create a new map, and I'm going to load in the data that Mark just showed you. I was going to try to show you that data before Mark had a chance, but I was glad he was there in the background to jump in when I lost my internet altogether here. So I'm going to go now back into project, and into maps, I'm going to create a new map. Now this map is going to include geology that was mapped by the U.S. Geological Survey and the Nevada Bureau of Mines and Geology at the 24,000 scale. The name of the quadrangle is Antler Peak, ANTLER_PEAK, and geology. And I'm going to actually call it, let's see here, Antler Peak Geology. So I'm going to create a new map, and I'm going to leave the map units in meters. We're going to be mapping in UTM, Universal Transverse Mercator Zone 11. So I'm going to set my display units to meters. I'm going to set a reference scale to 24,000 because that's the scale that the U.S. Geological Survey uses for this particular mapping study. I'm going to go into coordinate systems, and I'm going to set a coordinate system as a projected system. And again, it's UTM, Universal Transverse Mercator, in North America. NAT83 will be my datum, and it's zone 11. This is the standard UTM zone that includes all of Nevada. I'm also going to set a transformation because we're going to be going back and forth between NAT83 data and WGS 1984. I'm going to pick the ITRF translation from WGS 84 to NAT83. So what I've done now is I've set several parameters for this map. I've renamed it, I've set coordinate systems, set a reference scale, and now there's my map. Now it looks pretty skewed right now because if you notice, Nevada is right straight up and down the central meridian of this map. That's zone 11. I'm going to go add some data now. I'm going to go out and add a layer file that's already been created in desktop that I've been using to map Antler Peak for a few years. And it's actually a group layer file. It's called Antler Peak 24K group. I'm going to add that group in, and when I do, you'll see some of the data that Mark just showed you. So it'll take a second to bring that in. And when it does, ArcMap knows to zoom to the extent of that particular quadrangle, the Antler Peak quad. And when it does, you can see that in this map, in the group, I've got points, lines, and polygons. I've got a group of points for showing fault dip. I've got some points showing anticlinal fold attitudes and syncline attitudes, and some structure attitudes along special faults and other linear features. I've also got a linear set, a polyline set called faults. I've got one called folds, which just happens to include only synclines, 2 cross sections, a little bit of alteration, and a big layer showing geology coded by abbreviations for different rock types, including their rock type and their age. So I've got a lot of information in this map that came in through one group layer file. Now, one of the first things I want to do is I want to make my bedrock geology partially transparent. So I'm going to go in with the bedrock geology selected. I'm going to go up here to the appearance tab up on the top line of my Pro project. I'm going to switch to appearance, and there's a transparency tab here. I'm going to change my layer transparency to 60%. And when I do that, my geology is resampled on top of my topo base. I'm going to now zoom in, and I'm going to use my Map Explore button. And if you're ever wondering how to use your mouse, you can float over Explore, and it will show you how to use your left and right buttons, or central button, and your zoom wheel. So I'm going to zoom in now to the central part of the map, and I'm going to show you a little bit more of what we're dealing with here in this map. You can see that there are multiple rock types, and each one is coded and labeled with its abbreviated rock type name. You can also see that there are strike and dip symbols that are properly rotated, and the labels associated with the dip angle are also posted on the proper side of the label. Now, this labeling procedure is something that we wrote up in ArcUser about 4 years ago, and that uses Maplex to properly place and rotate those labels. So when you work in ArcGIS Pro, you can use the same techniques, the same data sets, the same symbology that you used in desktop. Now, I'm going to change the base map. Now, I'm going to go up to my base map, and I'm going to change it from the topographic base to an image base. So I'm going to change it to imagery, and you'll see now that there is a scale-related image that pops in underneath. And if I turn off bedrock geology, you'll see right through it. And now you can start to see possibly some relationships between structure mapped at the 24,000 scale and topography. So I'm going to pan around just a little bit to show you some things. And it takes a few seconds for this to refresh. But you'll notice that as I do, the orientation symbols on all my rotated points come into play. And I also see that there's some alteration here. There's an aureole of alteration right here in the center of my map. Now, I'm going to take you out really quickly to pretty much the full map extent. I'm going to right-click on the cross-sections layer, and I'm going to zoom to layer. And when I do, it takes me out to where you can see 2 cross-sections on top of the image. I'm going to turn off my image. Now, how good is this geology? How close does it match to the original mapping? Let's test it out. I've got a scanned JPEG image of this Antler Peak quadrangle stored on the computer. And again, this will be part of the data set. So we're going to add that in just as though you can when you're doing this project. If you go to the Battle Mountain project area, go to a JPEG folder, and using my old traditional way of storing JPEGs by coordinate system, I should have one JPEG in here called Battle Mountain Geology. I'm going to add that in. And then for the last thing today, I'm going to zoom you in and show you how close the point line and polygon geometries are to what was on the scanned map. So right now we've got a scanned map loaded as a base, and here's our project area. Now this mapping was done at a 1 to 24,000 scale, and remember we set a reference scale at 24,000. So I'm going to go down into my zoom window in the lower left, and I'm going to go to 24,000 scale. When I do, it starts taking me in on that map, and you can start to see that the underlying map, I'll turn it off, and the overlying partially transparent polygons, the symbolized polylines, and the rotated, symbolized, and labeled points are all showing up pretty nicely. I'm going to test it further. I'm going to go into like a 10,000 scale. So I'm going to zoom way into 1 to 10,000, and we'll try it again. My underlying JPEG is off. Now it's turned back on. I'll turn it off again. And I'll turn off geology now so you can look at just the relationship between the fault lines and the oriented points, and you can see that they're almost identical. This is incredibly close. At the 24,000 scale, considering how we do field mapping, this is probably a very, very close representation of the original paper map that was prepared and scanned by the U.S. Geological Survey. So with that, I'm going to save my project. going to save it one more time. I've got a new map in my project called Antler Peak Geology. I could even push that to a layout and print it at some point in the future. I've got a number of interesting styles that are used to make this map. These symbols that you see all came from the style set called Geology 24K, the original geology symbol set that we prepared at Esri back in the late 90s when ArcMap was first deployed as a desktop product. So these are kind of legacy symbols, but they still work quite well today. And you'll notice that some of the line symbols have crossing objects like the barbs on the thrust fault. They don't always behave quite as well as we wish they would, but they do behave pretty darn well. And it turns out if a line feature is fairly linear and doesn't have a lot of bends and kinks in it, the symbols line up quite well. But if you've got really kinky lines, so to speak, they don't line up quite as well. The points behave really well in terms of their orientation and symbology. The labels on those points also behave quite well. You'll notice a few points don't have labels. That's because those are vertically dipping beds. We assume that's a 90. You'll see that there are some lineations and features that are non-strike dip that are shown in red. They show directional plunge, things like that. So a lot of different symbology in this map, and it was all prepared by the U.S. Geological Survey and the Nevada Bureau of Mines and Geology. So I sure thank them for that. With that, I'm going to close. You've already seen what this map looks like as a published piece, and thank you, Mark, for jumping in and doing that while I lost my internet. So I'm going to save my project one more time, and I'm going to turn my imagery on underneath and save the project. So with that, I'll close, and I'll be available for questions. So if you have any questions, please post them, and Jeff Wade will take the questions, and he will be the master of ceremonies on questions. So thank you all. It's great to have a chance to show this to you.
Hey, thank you, Mike, and Mark for jumping in while we had a little internet problem there. So it is a time for questions. If you see the questions dialog box as part of the interface, I encourage you to perhaps type in a couple of questions, and we'll pass them to Mike or to Mark or even to Chris if there are any questions for Chris as part of the mug. While a couple of people enter questions, perhaps we'll start off with a couple of general questions that came in. Mike, let's start with you. I mean, it's clear that you've had lots of experience with ArcMap and manipulating mining and geoscience data in the past. And you've been extremely good, and we thank you so much on behalf of the mug for being willing to jump in and try implementing some of the traditional geoscience workflows that you've done in the past in ArcMap or even in ArcView way back when, and trying them out in Pro. So it seems like you've got used to Pro quite a bit now, although that's still a process, of course. So I guess I'm going to ask the question that perhaps a few people on the call would like to ask you and say, so what's your experience been like? You know, you're getting used to the tools, the capabilities, the user experience. What's your general feeling on Pro?
Well, thanks, Jeff. That's a great question. And yes, I've been working with Pro now for about a year. And only recently have I tried to quickly come up to speed and experiment with things that I've done for years in desktop. I'm finding that it works pretty well. In fact, this symbology test and the points, rotated points with labels, was something I wanted to try for this presentation because I just hoped it might work. And sure enough, I built a really clean group layer file over on desktop and pushed it across and brought it into ArcMap, and it looked really, really well. So now my challenge as a student of this particular science called GIS is to go into Pro and look at what came across from ArcMap and look for the similarities and differences, look for the ways that Pro manages rotated labels, etc., and just keep sort of a running checklist of things that I've done for so long in Map that I can now do in Pro. And I do encourage you all, just try that out. If you have a favorite map in desktop that has lots of interesting symbology, cartography in it, bring it across, take a look, and look back and forth at the properties in Pro for each object compared to the properties that were originally created in desktop. And from that, you'll learn how to do additional new things in Pro. So it's kind of learning by doing and working with, from traditional product up into new. So just give it a good try. I've had fun with it. As you can see, it's really challenging, and I have to always remember where that View tab is, because sure enough, it's really easy, like in desktop, to kill your table of contents. You can turn your project off, and it's fun to go find it again. So next question. Okay.
Well, hey, thanks, Mike. So I guess that leads me actually nicely into the question about the test data set that you mentioned. This Battle Mountain stuff is obviously, you've got a lot of experience with it. Now, you had mentioned in the course of the webinar that you were able to share some of that. So could perhaps you explain the test data set that you're able to share so that people can perhaps experiment with it? And Mark, maybe you could pick up with how that's going to be hosted and where people will find it. Obviously, following the webinar, we'll send links, but could you briefly say, Mike, about this test data set? And Mark, you can tell people briefly where they'll find it later.
Sure, Jeff. The data set that we started with is the same one we used for the previous session, the import and symbology section that we had in May. But I've added to it. I've added one more file geodatabase that includes the 24,000 scale geology, and I've also created that group layer file. So when you download the data set now, it'll be a little bit bigger. You'll have the new 24K geology file geodatabase, and you'll have a layer file that allows you to load that data set. You'll also have the scanned copy of the PDF map, the Antler Peak Quad, so you can pull that underneath and take a look at it. The whole data set's going to be less than, I hope, 15 megabytes in size when it's zipped, so it's pretty downloadable. And Mark, if you know where we're going to put this up on the website, let me know, and I'll let us all know, and we'll start looking for it.
Sure. I think this will be hosted on either one of our ArcGIS Online organizations made available publicly, or on a file sharing site such as Box. So stay tuned, and in the posted Q&A that we'll post here within a week, we will confirm for sure.
And I promise to keep it zipped up around 15 megabytes or smaller. So just stay tuned, and we'll get that posted for you. Also, I'm in the process of writing up the procedure for both working with multiple layouts and for importing and displaying, visualizing the 24K geology. I've got it in a PowerPoint that I was actually using in the background to keep me on task today, but I'm going to write that up and prepare just a Word document with lots of graphics posted in it that we can publish probably as a PDF, and you can download that, and it'll be step by step how to go in and work on the various tasks that we showed you today. So it will be well documented, and the data set and the documentation will probably hit the web about the same time, and I'm going to guess in about 3 weeks or less.
All right, great. So Mike, a couple of questions have come in from folks who are on the call. First one is about the section lines. Neil is asking about the section, what are the section lines for? Were we going to see the geology in the third dimension?
No.
So can you perhaps describe the section lines, what you're intending to do there? Is that for the future?
Yep, exactly. That was a teaser for what's coming next. I'm going to try to at least drape those sections onto topography and pull contacts along those sections and start to map them in 3D. That was a bit of a teaser for shapes of things to come. So stay tuned. I really haven't had a chance yet to push the 3D aspect of Pro as much as I have in both traditional ArcView, the old days, and in desktop. So start using 3D Analyst, and also I'm going to do a lot of work with Spatial Analyst. I want to be able to interpolate, rasterize that geochemical data and start draping that on 3D topography. those sections they're a placeholder for now. They're to remind me that yes, geology is a three-dimensional art/science, and yes, we're going to start looking at the subsurface. So thanks for that question.
So actually there's another question, Mike, about data handling and the visualization and interpolation of values in 3D, which we improve, and handling drill hole data, samples, cross-sections. So it would be interesting, Claudia is asking this question about taking maybe some of these examples further, and either Mike or Mark, maybe there's interest, it seems, with this audience to take the next step into 3D, handling large amounts of data and integrating both the surface and drill hole data and looking at it in 3D.
Well, thanks, Jeff. Yes, if any of you followed some of the work I've done in desktop, you'll know that I do have a 3D borehole data set that accompanies some of this Battle Mountain data. And I have not yet tried pulling that into Pro, but that would be one of my next projects, is to put that in Pro and extend it below the surface in 3D as polylines showing lithology, alteration, and or rock chemistry along boreholes. So we've got the data to start experimenting with it. I just haven't had a chance yet.
And Mike, Jordan asked a question about collecting and organizing very large amounts of geochem data. You have any tips and tricks when the number of geochem samples gets heavy? You got some tips and tricks for handling that stuff?
Well, I do, and I have to kind of speak from the perspective of some of my clients that manage those large data sets. I cheat a bit when I build these training pieces. I make them small and I standardize the data so that they're pretty squeaky clean and they run nicely. But in truth, yeah, if you're working with big exploration projects, you're going to have a lot of geochemical data. And I know some of the clients, people that I work with, will actually store that data in a Esri partner database, such as Acquire, and they will bring it across through queries into a SQL or similar database. So if you're into large data sets, you'll probably have a data manager in the background, like SQL, or even just running with Access in Microsoft's world. You can pull data in and use queries in SQL or Access to display subsets of data. But again, the data itself needs to be managed and manipulated in that database, pretty much offline when you're doing the data development, and then brought into MAP for testing and for display, and then eventually for distribution and use by all your field people.
All right, cool. So last call for questions online while I bring it back to Chris maybe. Chris, would you do us the honors of maybe thanking Mike and look into the future with the mining user group?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Jeff. Again, Mike, thank you very much for all the hard work that you put into this presentation. I think a lot of people that start looking at the amount of data that you've done and worked with here and in preparation for this, it's a immense amount of information, and we really appreciate your diving into the process and the software and the technology to assist our mining community in developing their skill set. So a hearty thank you from our user community, and especially from the mining user group. And to further that, again, going back to our mission statement of what we're about, we are about driving business value for our users. And so for the folks that are out there and that have listened and seen our series of webinars over the course of the last 7 or 8 months, we've really tried to touch on some very important subjects in the latest and greatest in the technology world, so that we can really emphasize and drive home the value that the software and the technology brings to us as a mining community. And Jeff and Mark, thank you very much for participating today and driving this topic for our user group. And again, we look forward to the upcoming user conference in San Diego, and specifically the mining track on the Wednesday sessions for that conference, and look forward to meeting people in person and really establishing some paths forward with Esri and partnership with Esri for furthering our business uses.
All right, thanks for that, Chris, and Mike, thanks so much again. We're about to close out, but perhaps remind everybody, hopefully this webinar was useful on Pro. We may take it further if there's interest in doing so, maybe into 3D as people are suggesting. There are, of course, other aspects like mobile technologies that have been expressed as future webinars. So we'll discuss with Chris and other members of the community in San Diego here in just 2 weeks' time, and see you in the summer for further webinars. I think it's just about 10 o'clock here in California, so we'll call it a day for today. Thank you so much for your time, for joining us today. I'm sorry that we had a couple of struggles with audio from Mike. I'd like to just remind you that a short survey will pop up right after this webinar ends. We'd greatly appreciate your feedback because it helps us in designing future webinars. Thank you for joining us. We hope you found it useful, and we'll send you an email where you can find the link to the recording if you'd like to share it with others. Thank you, everybody. Have a great day. Bye for now.